This is the Benefits Buzz Podcast, your weekly pulse on what's happening in the world of employee benefits. Brought to you by your friends at WEX, who believe in simplifying benefits for everyone. Now listen up and let's get buzzed!
Hello, welcome to Benefits Buzz, a WEX podcast. In today's episode, we're diving into how to switch your benefits administration provider. We've got Lisa Bauer, Director of Implementation at WEX. She's going to share some practical tips and expert advice on finding new vendors and making sure your employees experience a smooth transition. Lisa, welcome to the show. It's great to have you.
Thanks, Nate.
So, Lisa, we're right on the cusp of open enrollment, and this is the time we often see employers switching their benefits administrators. So let me start off by asking you a question that's really been top of mind for me, which is, what are some key indicators that it's time for a change, that it's time for an employer to consider switching their benefits administrator?
Sure. There's really kind of two prevalent themes that we see with changing benefit providers. The first is the current account team is not meeting your expectations, that responsiveness has slowed down, or there's been quite a bit of team turnover with your account management team. Or there's a lack of ownership by your account manager, that things are going into maybe just a ticketing system and you're not seeing the people that are doing the work responding to you. Another prevalent theme is errors are becoming more common. There's file issues with payroll or the vendor files, and you're seeing a heightened number of transaction errors within the call center or your account team.
Yeah, those are good. Those episodes, we're hitting it right on the nose, aren't we, right? People are tuning in because either hopefully they're not experiencing these issues, but if they are, Lisa, I appreciate you calling them out, right? Because these are the things that HR employers should expect, or hopefully not to expect when it comes to dealing with benefit. And so I think if you're listening, you're like, okay, I might be in the season for a switcheroonie here. Where do I start? What's my litmus to start evaluating if I am experiencing some of these issues? You know what? I want to dip my toe. Maybe I want to start thinking about evaluating another vendor. Where should they start, Lisa?
Really look at your provider's company and the team's culture. Is it a provider that's service focused? Because really what it comes down to, it, you know, whatever technology you have out there, what it comes down to is still benefits administration is a service industry, and it requires a high level of customer service and account service. So service should always continue to be the main focus of your provider. What's the reputation in the industry? Talk to the provided references and confirm that your provider can handle your unique needs. Because the one thing about benefits is nothing is ever the same company to company. Every company has their unique needs, their unique programs, and you want to make sure that your chosen provider can handle your unique needs. And then third, really during the sales process, you want to meet with your provider's operations leadership, not just the sales team. Ensure that their goals and values align with your own. During those meetings, you can have in-depth conversations about where you're seeing your particular pain points, and the operations leader can come and show you how they can solution for those.
I really love that you shared that, Lisa. And you know, it sounds like there's so many important factors to consider, from the service, that it's going to meet their expectations, the new administrator is going to align kind of with those unique company needs. But are there any other features or functionalities in kind of a more strategic or executional perspective that HR teams should look for when they're kind of vetting out a new benefits administrator provider?
Sure. So focusing on the technology and tools for a second, you want to look at what tools your provider has available to engage employees in their available benefits in the system and making their decisions. We want benefits to be a year-round experience, not just something that employees look at during their annual enrollment period. So you want to understand what your provider has available to continuously engage employees year-round, as well as obviously the important times during a life event, new hires, or open enrollments. Also, you'd want to ask what administrative tools are available, such as analytics, reporting capabilities, transparency within the system that are going to help you as a client continue to provide service to your employees. And then again, looking beyond the technology, as I mentioned before, service is key. Both the employee experience with the customer service representatives and the interactions on the website, as well as you and your team's HR administrator experience with your account management team.
Yeah, those are great things to think about. I think thanks for making that what I'll call a laundry list so that people are listening can kind of check those things off, right? The goal is, right, we're looking for where the grass is greener. If we're going to change, those are some of the things that we should be looking for. Great to call them out. But everyone knows that the old adage, change is hard, right? And so anytime you're thinking about leaving an existing vendor or admin, it's like, is the juice going to be worth the squeeze? Because there's sometimes transition issues, right? And so what I'd love to hear, let's just be honest, real talk here, Lisa. What are some of the typical transition challenges, let's call them challenges, that can come across when switching? But I want to also be positive here. What are some of the ways that you can overcome those challenges of working through that transition?
Sure. So I will say probably the most common difficulty throughout the transition processes and within the implementation process is data integrity and data process. So the data coming from either the current HRIS system or more commonly the prior administrator system. What sort of shape is that data in? What are the fields that are coming over? What's missing? We really find that that's where a lot of the gaps are. And the good news is by getting that data early on in the transition period, what that does is it allows the benefit admin provider to really start looking at that data and figuring out where the pain points are and where we can help to correct those. So kind of two ways to overcome that. One, engaging the HRIS team and HRIS vendor early on in the process. A lot of times HRIS vendors have long lead times in terms of doing any changes. So the earlier you can engage your HR vendor, the better. Also, you want to have a clear understanding of where your data and payroll pain points are to also be able to communicate them and work with your benefits provider on a solution. So a good example of that is several of our accounts and clients struggle with how to effectively provide information around their leave population and what different types of leaves can drive what benefits they get. So helping to identify that as a pain point and come up with solutions on how to address that particular issue is a common one we see, for example.
Thank you very much, Lisa. I really want to, something that Eric just said about kind of change is hard and keeping in line with that theme of real talk. Change management is something that's really difficult for nearly everyone. And you think about the actual employee experience, the end user of these benefits, whether it be something as complex as moving their HSA over to a new benefits administrator, or something as really rudimentary as just getting a new benefits debit card in the mail. There's a lot of change that can go into this. So how can HR teams really posture themselves effectively to communicate the transition to their employees to make that changeover as smooth as possible?
Sure. So really the initial reach out starts with communicating with your HR professionals, keeping the lines of communication open between the benefits team working on the project and the HR professionals out in the field at different locations. So you really want to keep your HR professionals informed of the timeline and what to expect from the change and when it's going to cut over, especially if there's going to be any potential system or service blackouts as the data is transitioned over there close to the live date. And then also arranging for a demonstration of the new website with your HR professionals around not only what the employees are going to experience, but also what they as administrators have access to in running analytics and reports and getting the data they need in order to best help their employees. And then in turn, you can work with your HR professionals and the benefits provider, as well as if you have an internal communications team, come up with an email campaign to employees showcasing the new website, the new service center, and what tools are available to assist them in their benefits decision that might be really new and exciting that you want them to use, especially if the change happens to coincide with your annual enrollment period. You can really incorporate all of this into the general communications that are rolled out during annual enrollment and encompass it into one project.
Yeah. Over communicate. It's impossible to do. It sounds like that's what I heard. Moral of the story.
You really can't over communicate when
No.
it comes to a switch in providers or any, like you said, any change. The more information you can give your employees, forewarned is forearmed.
I love that saying. Right. Because at the end of the day, we're trying to minimize disruption, right? Whether that be the experience of your employees, if we can mitigate that, it's going to feel like a nice transition. And for many, they won't even feel any of that change. That's something that the HR team can look and do and own. I'm a self-proclaimed type B personality. So I kind of love to kind of live for the moment, but this is not a time to be like that. I got to imagine, best prepared, lots of milestones, lots of really good timelines, to make sure you're really being methodical and pragmatic about how you approach this transition. So I'd love for you, like you've done this probably a million times, Lisa, working with clients. And so you have it feels like that, right? And they've all been amazing. You have some best practices around setting up, a timeline or setting up milestones that, maybe that someone might want to emulate or even implement, just as they think about getting from point A to point B.
Right. So first would be early engagement of all the affected groups. That includes your internal groups, such as your HRIS team, your IT department, your payroll team, your communications team, as well as externally, wanting to make sure that you're engaging your affected vendors, such as your health providers, your life insurance vendors, your wellness providers, so that everyone is aware that this change is coming, because then we can plan the work and the affected vendors and the affected teams can make sure that that work is on their roadmaps. Another way to really plan for the milestones is this is where you can lean on your implementation manager with your provider. They're the experts at this. Like you said, we've done it a million times. The implementation manager really understands each phase of the project in minute detail and how it impacts other phases, how it's going to impact vendors, how it's going to impact your group internally, and where there are risk points and how to mitigate those risks. So really leaning on your implementation manager and their expertise is going to be key.
Lisa, you have already shared so much information, and I'm desperately trying to keep notes so I can go back and ask you clarifying questions. But we've talked a little bit about some challenges and trying to mitigate some risk. But I really want to go back and talk about data integrity for just a moment. Data integrity and security is just so important in today's world, and it seems top of mind for just about everybody. So in that kind of forewarned is forearmed space, what steps can HR teams take to ensure data integrity and security during what can be a very complicated switch to a new provider?
Sure. So probably first and foremost in the process is you want to ensure your provider's IT security features are cutting edge, that they are up to date on the latest and greatest in terms of all coverage with security. Obviously, that's really going to be key, not only initially, but as well as ongoing. I mean, we're passing a lot of different employee sensitive data back and forth. You want to make sure it's secure. So ensuring that the security features are cutting edge and in place, and there's processes in place for that. Second, secure FTP connections. Those are the standards. Everything should go through that if at all possible, because that is the most secure method of sending data. So that really would be key as well. And then going back to the data integrity, really, so we know that, data is only as good as the person keying in the information. A good benefit provider will be able to do detailed audits on both the initial data that's coming in and the ongoing data files, and provide feedback on where we're seeing discrepancies and where we're seeing potentials for filling in gaps or improving processes within that integrity. So that is actually a large part of implementation when we get the data, is doing that initial analysis so that right off the bat, when go live hits, the data is sparkling clean. And we do that with a series of audits, working very closely with clients and vendors to ensure that any questions are answered and that any gaps are closed.
That's the soundbite of the episode so far. Data is sparkling clean, because I've always heard dirty in, dirty out, right? So making sure that data is as good as possible that's fantastic. I'm using that one. I'm stealing it, Lisa, and I'm using it now.
I'm fine. Eric, I was going to say the exact same thing, so I'm glad you said it. Yes, dirty in, dirty out.
That's fantastic. I love it. I love it. The goal is, right, if you're going to go through this, if you're going to go through the change, right, if you're going to, your hope that you're going to go to a provider that's maybe has some, not only a good experience, and I think we're talking table stakes and we're talking about data, right? Like these things have to happen, but hopefully if you're going to make the move, you're doing your homework and you're finding maybe some new and improved features, benefits, products, offerings that come along with your new provider. And so you're on the cusp of this stuff, Lisa. You know what some of these trends are. I would love to hear what are some of those new products or features that one might be on the lookout for, if you will, if they're gonna upgrade. Let me upgrade you. That's my Beyonce there. To another vendor.
Yeah. So I would say probably first and foremost is the provider's decision support tool when it comes to deciding your medical provider. Decision support tools we see continue to evolve in the industry and have really started to include not only deciding your medical, but what sort of spending account contributions should you be making? Should you be also possibly electing a voluntary plan such as critical illness or hospital indemnity or accident coverage? So a decision support tool is really key to helping employees make those decisions and determine what's best for them. And as we see decision support continue to evolve, it starts to involve not only the answers to that employees are making to questions within the tool, but a lot of tools now, including WEX's tool, is we're able to connect in and pull in employees' actual claim data and say, okay, based on your history for the last 3 years, this is really where we recommend you think about enrolling or potentially contributing. So continuing to personalize decision support more and more can only benefit employees. And then from a administrator side of thing, what really comes down to the trend we're seeing is analytics, quick hit tables to see where enrollments are taking place, what website pages are being most hit, what call center volumes are looking like. So really web analytics from an administrative side, we see continue to evolve. And that's where we also continue to invest more and more technology into as well here at WEX.
First of all, I love that, Lisa. I didn't even know that we could bring in historical claim data. So once again, I feel like every time I'm in one of these episodes, I'm the one that learns so many things. And I loved how you talked about analytics and the importance of personalization. It even goes back to the unique needs of each company. It really feels like working very closely with the new administrator during the implementation phase is beyond crucial. So you have a wealth of experience in that space. Can you share some real world examples or best practices for collaborating with the new provider? Because I'm guessing there's, it's kind of like starting this brand new relationship, right? It's a business relationship, but a relationship nonetheless. You may not even know what the new provider can bring to the table. How do you really collaborate well to meet those unique needs?
Sure. And yes, you really do get to know your provider well. Implementation managers really become our clients' best friends there for several months.
I believe that. I absolutely believe that.
Very much so, yes. Available all hours of the day to talk about you and your benefit plans, very much so. So really, pretty much right off the bat, the more documentation that can be provided up front, the better. So the more information you can hand over to my team on how your benefits and your population works, the more armed we are, going back to the forewarned is forearmed. So things like the benefit guides, rate sheets, file layouts for your payroll and your HR files, plan summaries, SBCs, anything else that might be helpful in terms of how your benefits are structured and designed for your employees. Really giving that to the implementation team allows us to start looking and pulling apart the data and coming up with a game plan for the best way to set things up on the system and the service to best meet the needs of your employees. Really, the second is that, again, leaning on your implementation manager, this time for best practices. So as you said, we've done this a million times before. The implementation team and the provider will have suggestions that fit your needs, work well within the administrative session, and also have historically proven to work in other scenarios that are identical to this. So by utilizing the best practices, you really get the experience of all that have gone before you and setting things up in the best possible way. And your implementation manager is the best person to walk you through what's going to be the best practice for not only common situations, but more unique needs, especially around things like wellness programs or HSA employer contribution structures. Those are two areas where we see clients coming up with very unique solutions and programs for their employees. And we want to make sure that we're able to set these up in the best possible way. So we're getting the word out to employees on how they can best utilize their benefits.
Awesome. Super thorough. Sounds like really get to know your implementation manager with who you choose, because it sounds like you're going to be besties with them, and there's a lot writing on that relationship and right, and how the intricacies that go into making sure everything is set up great. So I appreciate that. As we're recording this, I am deep into the Olympics right now, and I've been watching Simone Biles and the redemption, and I love watching gymnastics. And I always have to go, wow, that was amazing. And then the score comes back and the judge is giving them some random number. And I'm like, I don't know, how do they come to these evaluations, right? Kind of, I'm like, I don't know, that looked amazing to me. But anyway, they got me thinking about, I'm going to make this transition watch. I'm going to make the connection between when you're done with this, right? You want to know how you performed, right? Like when the transition's over, there's got to be some there's not a panel of judges. I know that, but there's got to be some metrics, some success tools, some indicators that say, hey, this transition went well. Mm-hmm. Here's where we crush it, and here's where there's opportunities to do better. What do those tools look like? Who are our judges? How do we know if we had a great springboard transition and we stuck the landing, right?
Yeah, although I don't know if I'd want an Olympic judge judging my performance, because they're tough. So really three areas. I would say the first is we like to meet with all of our clients after the implementation has gone live, about a month live. Just having a conversation, not even necessarily data oriented, but just how do you think it's going? How do you feel? What's your gut reaction to how things are going? Where can we improve upon it? And, where do we maybe need to fill in some gaps? Going to more specific data oriented metrics, really. File timeliness and accuracy. Are the files going out on time? Are the error reports low? This is especially true around payroll. Payroll really is the barometer for how well the system is working and if it needs to be looked at or other potential problems, because everything comes, I guess, really going with different analogies, everything comes out with the wash. And in this case, the wash is usually payroll. So that's a really good barometer for how things are working. Another one, call center volume and topics, to get an understanding of what your employees are calling about. This can help you really understand where employees are having questions. Do we need to potentially beef up things on the website, different communications, things are available there? Or are there issues? Are they calling about potentially that they're not showing enrolled in their provider and they would expect to be? So that again will show us where there's problems within, or again, not necessarily problems, but just do we need to enhance certain things to make the employee experience better?
Lisa, we have come at you with a bunch of questions, and without fail, you have answered every single one of them. So I want to give you an opportunity. We come prepared with some questions, but when we have the opportunity to speak to somebody who's an expert in their field, we would be remiss if we didn't give you the opportunity to really shine. So I'm going to ask you one last question, which is, do you have any other tips or advice that you'd be willing to share with our audience about switching benefit admin providers?
Sure. Probably one big one. Really, a change in benefits providers and an implementation onto a new system and service is a great way to reevaluate what is and is not working for you as a company with the current provider. Where are there enhancements that can be made? Where can we make a process better? Where do we need to switch up a process entirely or look at things from a different direction? Implementations, I like to say, are the gift that keeps on giving. If you don't get it right, you will be paying it for the next 3 years. So it's very important we get it right. And one way we do that is evaluating how things are currently working with the provider and how can we make it better, because obviously there's a reason for the switch and we want to address that up front. We don't want to just take on something because that's the way it's always been done. Is there a way to make it better and make things potentially less painful for you as a client?
Lisa, that's my takeaway sound bite for all things implementation. Get it right. So
Exactly. No pressure.
no pressure, but get it right. Thank you so much for joining us today, Lisa. I know your insights are really going to resonate with our audience. And thank you to our listeners for tuning into today's episode. If you'd like to leave us a review or share topics that may be of interest, please email us at benefits.buzz@wexinc.com. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks, everyone.
WEX is in the business of simplifying benefits for everyone. Now, although we certainly hope our podcast sparks some aha moments, like that was pretty cool, but of course we cannot provide legal, investment, or financial advice. And, well, therefore, nothing shared in this podcast should be interpreted as such. We encourage you to seek out appropriate professional advice regarding your plans. Hey, congratulations! You made it through our disclaimer. Thanks for listening.